Hello and welcome to the two-man power trip of wrestling. Your host, JP John Paz, with me today. Two very special guests, of course, returning guests, the King of Connecticut himself, Matthew the Granimal, and then, of course, the new guest here, JLN himself, Jeffrey Lewis Neal, a.k.a. Neal Koloff. Welcome in. How you guys doing?
Doing great.
Very good. I want to start off because we're going to talk about some Shoe Pro. We're definitely going to talk to the man behind the Koloff Dynasty here, Neal Koloff. But the King, what do you got going on with Shoe Pro Wrestling right now? What is the latest and greatest?
A lot of exciting stuff. You might have seen what happened yesterday. The PWI Insider picked up this story where Frank Shamrock offered to train Paul Roma to face Hulk Hogan in a Shoe Pro match because of their heat, to bury their heat. And I don't know what the likelihood is of that happening, but I made an official announcement that we offer up our full coaching staff with Scientific Wrestling and Shoe Pro Wrestling, including the King of Pins, Wade Chalice, Guinness World Record holder for pins, our main coach, El Presidente, Pat Miletich, coach of 11 world champions in UFC, and Frank Shamrock, and we've got some other great coaches as well. That announcement was made. But what I'm really excited about to talk about regarding Shoot Pro tonight is the gentleman that's right above me here on the screen, right next to you, Paz, man, Mr. Neal Koloff, because I was contacted by a Granomaniac out of my former state where I resided for a number of years, South Kakalaki. And his name was Adam Helms. And he's the production manager for the NBC affiliate in Charleston, CDB Channel 2. And he called me all excited because he had watched our executive team, myself, Jake Shannon, Pat Miletich, and Frank Shamrock on the Power and Glory podcast with Paul Roma. And he was so pumped. He said, man, he goes, is there any way that we could start working with Shoot Pro Wrestling and my station? And I said, absolutely. And that's when I reached out to Neal, because in addition to being Neal Koloff, I coached in South Carolina. Of course, I'm originally from Connecticut, but I spent a lot of time in South Carolina. And a guy that I coached who was transitioning he actually coached alongside of him for a high school called Dutch Fork, where we were assistant coaches. And then also I coached him in submissions, and I cornered his MMA fight. He had a couple MMA fights. Was a gentleman by the name of Steve Volpone, who's one of my nearest and dearest friends. And Steve Volpone was a two-time South Carolina state champion in wrestling, but he was also the roommate of the man sitting next to you, Neal Koloff, at Anderson College, and they were wrestling teammates. And JLN is a legend in the Palmetto State as a wrestler. I mean, he's legendary for his antics on the radio. Everybody knows him from the Rise Guys, the FM morning show. Everybody knows him for his impersonations, and he's an enormously entertaining morning jock, as they say, but also as an amateur wrestler in the state of South Carolina. And I got to tell this story, man. I used to host and broadcast for 864 Fighting Championships, which was a premier MMA promotion in South Carolina many years ago. And I was hosting a pre-show. My broadcast partner was one of my best friends. I say R.I.P. brother, Stephan Bonner, UFC Hall of Famer. And I was hosting the pre-show in the cage with the gorgeous 864 ring girls. And we had as our guests the Rise Guys, because Jeff was the hottest morning jock in radio in the Carolinas. And we were filming the pre-show with Jeff, and Jeff called Stefan out to either face him in the 864 cage or in a professional wrestling ring. And I tell you, we can tell the story about this show. Bonner loved them to death. One of my best friends in the world. We had many great times together. But Bonner loved to tip back that Jack Daniels. He was good friends with old Jack. And the night before, we had tore up the bar. We were both chasing the same Lebanese bartender at the Stanford Marriott, and it was the Marriott Ballroom where the show was being held. And we were tearing it up in there, broke a table, and the security guy came over. And I saw that as my opportunity to dart to the elevator and get out of Dodge, get up to my room. Well, I come to find out Bonner had kind of roughed up the security guard and gotten kicked out. The police were called and gotten kicked out of the Marriott. This is a legendary story. And I had to smooth things over with the hotel management and the promoters, George Shire and Roy Kim from 864, to let Bonner back in to work the show with me the next day. So Bonner, this is a funny story, man, and I love telling Stefan Bonner stories, man. He was a hell of a lot of fun and a wild man. There was a promoter, John. What was his full name? The pro wrestling promoter that was at that cage fight.
John Collins.
John Collins, yeah. So Bonner had me take him to the liquor store and get a handle of Jack, and he's up in his room, and Collins, I go up to Bonner's room because he wants to meet Bonner. Bonner opens the door. He's got a bottle of Jack, and he's buck-ass naked. The old C&B hanging out. And he goes to – and I said, this is John Collins. You know, you're going to do some pro wrestling for him. And Bonner goes, where would you like to shake? Bonner was always a hilarious individual. So then that pre-show was wild as hell. There was a coach there named Matt Perkle that I had done some seminars for. You remember Matt Perkle, right? He coached for he coached for Emerald High School in South Carolina, and I'd done a coaching clinic for him actually that week, and he was the cut man for the show. So he says to me, he's like, I want to see you and Bonner grapple, and I want to see, you know, who gets the best of who. So Bonner, I knew he was heavy on the jack, so I slid behind him and picked his ankle and roughed his hair up, which was the wrong thing to do, because when I came in on him the second time, he hooked my arm like a double wrist lock. It felt like a gorilla had my arm, and he threw me like a sack of potatoes, tied my arm behind my back, and he was on the jack. He didn't let go. And my arm, the whole rest of that show, even when I broke up that melee with him and Neal, was like dangling like this. I thought I had a broken arm. Turned out I had a bone bruise. And then we had to, from there, these are the wild times of South Kakalaki, Paz, man. It's South Kakalaki is a crazy place, man. I've sort of semi-retired down to Florida now. I gotta get out of the craziness there. But as that progressed, that show, we were doing the pre-show, and as Bonner, as Jeff is cutting his promo on Bonner shoots hard on Jeff, and Jeff handled him. He gave one of the most legendary sprawls in South Kakalaki history, man, and got him. And Bonner was trying to get him up against the cage, and then I had to come over because the ring girls were there and waist lock Bonner and trying to pull him off. Oh, it was wild, man. You could see that. That's on video. That needs to go viral, man. So that's why when they reached out to me, when Adam Helms reached out to me for Channel 2, I immediately thought of the great Neal Koloff because he gets it. I mean, he's a shooter, and he can promote, and he's ace on the mic. He's in the entertainment business as well. He's wrestled everybody in pro wrestling, but this is shoot pro wrestling, so it's going to be a shoot. So I put him on the horn with Adam Helms because Adam also owns Battleground Championship Wrestling, which is a premier promotion on the coast of South Carolina. And this September, Neal Koloff is going to be doing a televised match against a local guy. We want to book him against a wrestler that's local, amateur wrestler that's local, obviously, because we want to have somebody who get a buzz going. But Neal will be there in the studio of the NBC affiliate promoting this. So as business development manager for Shoot Pro, I am pulling out all the stops to try to make this the premier promotion in combat sports, taking combat sports back to the future. And I had to reach out to my old buddy, Neal Koloff, to bring him in. And that's pretty much all I have to say, Paz Man, on this show. I want to give Neal the stage.
What an intro.
So, what an intro for you. So is any of that or all that true? Or is he blowing smoke, so to speak? It's like
He's full of shit. Then I'm kidding. no, it's all true. Funny part was the thing with Bonner. Again, as he said, we're promoting it, and then my first initial thought was we were going to just go face to face, and that was it. And when he just right out of nowhere just threw the shot, and I immediately, instincts kick in as an amateur wrestler, like a former amateur wrestler, always a shooter, instincts kick in. And I immediately went into that mode where, okay, this is a little different now, but here we go. if we're going to go, we're going to go. But I miss Stefan, an amazing human being. And even wrestling him in Gastonia. The quick story about that. I had the match with him. The only match in my career outside of like special gimmick matches, where it's like no holds barred or weapons or anything like that. The first ever match I was ever in, still to this day, where no weapons or anything like that involved, but I was sore. Extremely sore after the match, and it's because it's
I hit you with that ring bell, brother. Because I beat you in the back with that ring bell.
I'll be honest. The thing is like working with Bonner that night, even that ring bell, I didn't even feel it because of the fact of how hard he was hitting in that match, and it was just it's not the fact that he was trying to hurt me. It was the fact that he just, that's all he's been trained to do.
Oh, and, I got to jump in until. Oh, I remember that kick. That's what I was going to say. Yeah, that moved the ring.
Yeah, I was leaned up against the post, and he threw some body shots and then a spin kick. And again, they were all being laid in, and it's one of those jokes that we say in pro wrestling, like, brother, just go ahead and stiff me because your work punches are killing me. So it was one of those deals where I was like, if once I'm up against the post, he's going to throw a kick, I'm going to move. If I had not moved, I probably wouldn't be here talking to you right now.
That ring moved.
The ring moved. He kicked it so hard. And when I saw it on video later, I was like, oh my God. And just it was just an honor. It was a real honor to be in the ring with him.
I got to jump in, pause, and tell two quick stories regarding Bonner and pro wrestling. So that was a great match. I got a chance to call that match, actually, and then I interfered at the end with the ring bell, like I was talking about there. But Bonner's first pro wrestling match, I booked him for House of Glory, which a lot of the fans may know it's now. It may still be owned by Master P. I'm not sure. But they're a pretty good sized regional promotion. They had a big show, their big summer show. I booked him in a match against Matt Riddle, and I was broadcasting that show. I was the one-man show for that. And so we get there, and Bonner says, Riddle's not showing up. I said, why? And we were rooming together in Queens, and he goes, he's got nothing on the social media. Radio silence. He goes, me and Forrest are the biggest stars ever from Ultimate Fighter. He got kicked off Ultimate Fighter. He called him an Ultimate Fighter jabroni. And he's like, why is he not promoting it? He's not going to do the match. Guess what happened? About 3 hours before we were supposed to go to the arena, the promoter calls and says, Riddle pulled out. And I called Riddle on that on Saturday, actually, with Reinhardt. I put him on the spot because he wrestled the next day, right? So
Right.
he gives him an opponent named Sho Tanaka. First thing I asked the promoter was, I said, does Sho speak English? He goes, oh, yeah. You get in the back, he doesn't speak a word of English. And they went out there and they spoke in the language of wrestling. And it was my honor to call that match because it was such a good, like it says on the marquee, wrestling, because Sho was married, as they say, to Kazushi Sakuraba in Japan before that. So he knew how to have a match with Stefan. And I'll tell another funny story, man. I did this pay-per-view for Mike Caramico, who Jeff knows, the promoter for Millionaire Fight Club. He also promoted a roast of Dan Severn that Neal hosted, or where I had the opportunity to roast Dan. And this show was at a really cool promotion that ran every weekend. I had the opportunity to wrestle there many times, called APW. Yeah, right outside of Spartanburg in Boiling Springs, South Carolina. But Rhonda, who's an attractive woman, big hair, big blonde hair. And Jeff's got some other stories you can tell about Mr. Eagle. But she had all her church friends there. And Eagle didn't tell her we were doing this show. And we had the Legends and Vixens, which was two adult entertainers. Bonner and I had hosted the weigh-ins the night before at the strip club. And these girls were nearly naked to sign autographs. They had their thongs on, nothing. But the one girl, Summer Steele, just had pasties. She had pasties and a thong on. And Rhonda was flipping out. Like, you didn't tell me, Jay, you didn't tell me what the hell's going on. All my church friends are here for this show. So that was a great one, man. And I had the pleasure of wrestling Bonner there and in that mixed tag, and that was a blast. And Jeff is right, but I loved it. I loved wrestling Bonner because, that's the way that wrestling should be. Bonner didn't do a lot of strikes with me, but he did a lot of wrestling, and and he basically looks at it as like a sparring. More like a sparring session, but that's what makes for the best matches, man. That's what pro wrestling should be. I've said it many times before. When I got into pro wrestling, Billy Wicks, my old coach and mentor, told me, he said, you tell those fans there's not a damn thing you do in that ring that to your opponent that you can't do to all those fat slobs paying to see you. And that's what professional wrestling should be. And shoot pro wrestling is at a whole nother level because it's all shoots. It's 100% legit. And people who will ask me, is there any works? Our competitors don't even know what a work is. If you tell them a work, they think they've got to go to work. The only guy that would even know from our Vegas tournament was Blake Troop, but he's also an MMA champion in addition to being a professional wrestler. Everybody else comes from the MMA cage, the amateur wrestling mat, and the grappling stage. We've got LFA champions. We've got some guys and gals that were on Ultimate Fighter. We've got some NCAA wrestlers. We've even got some Greco guys from the world team. We had a couple guys compete in that tag team that we did. We do tag teams. We do triple threats, but it's all shoot. So check out shootprowrestling.com.
Now, Neal, what is your background, though? What is specifically your background? Because I know Shelton Benjamin is like your biggest fan. So is it amateur wrestling? What obviously besides pro wrestling, what's your background?
Sure. So yeah, my background, I was an amateur wrestler since I was in the first grade. So it's literally my whole life. Shelton went to a school I want to say about 2.5 hours down the road from us at Orangeburg Wilkinson High School, where he was a state champion. And obviously, when I was growing up, like you heard about Shelton and heard about like even his teammates that he would have. But here in South Carolina, I was a two-time state champion myself here in South Carolina, and I was a two-time national qualifier, D2 qualifier. And so once I really got to know, I knew Shelton a little bit through the high school. I mean, even though he was not dating him or anything, but even though he was a little older than me, but we knew of each other. But where we really got to know each other was in pro wrestling. And then once I left college, I needed a break. I mean, I was wrestling hard, I was going hard, and I needed a break. That's when I got into pro wrestling. Trained by Brody Chase, who he did jobs for the Crockett's and for WCW. And so, and working with guys like that, and then eventually making my way up into NWA Wildside, which was ran by Bill Behrens, and obviously who came from NWA Wildside, phenomenal AJ Styles, which
Yep.
funny story about him. My freshman year going into Anderson College at the time, now it's known as Anderson University. My freshman year was supposed to be, it's the same college that AJ Styles went to. He was going to be a senior that year, but he left, and I think he got married to his wife, obviously now. Or they've been together since high school, but like he left, and then but I remember seeing him at camps that I would go to at Anderson. And then next thing you know, like you see the guys talking on the team, they're like, "Oh yeah, big Alan Jones, he's going into pro wrestling. He's going into pro wrestling. Big Alan
Did,
Jones is." And that's his name. And
did
so
Volponi know
once
him? Did Volponi know?
probably he probably knew him, but Valponi and I came in at the same time. So we probably saw him at camps. And I know a lot of the guys that I wrestled with, Ryan Hardy, Sean Meeks, who Sean Meeks was probably one of the quickest heavyweights in the country, that I've seen. He was uh, twice ranked fourth in the nation and placed fourth in the nation, and probably one of the most jacked up guys I've ever seen in my life. Even just wrestling at the college level, but he had a sweet outside single. And funny thing about Sean, he was lazy in practice. He was one of the most laziest guys in practice. But when he stepped on that mat to go wrestle for the 7 minutes in college, it's like watching, Kyle Dake. It's like watching him. It's like watching, Kale Sanderson. It's like he was like watching
Yeah.
those guys, and just an incredibly tough human being. Scott Goldstein was another one who placed fourth in the nation. So many guys that came through there. And but once I got into NWA Wildside, it's funny because AJ would be there, and once he and I would talk, I would say like, "Oh yeah, Coach Admonson, who was the coach at Anderson," and he's giving the big thumbs down. Which, funny story about Admonson. Admonson was not a high school wrestler at all. He was a big football player, and
He
once
was
he
from New
got
York, right? Wasn't he the fat guy Steve was telling me from New York?
no, that was DeTalo. That was
Okay.
DeTalo. Admonson, I can't remember where Admonson was from. I just know that he went to Campbell University on a football scholarship, and the coach was telling him that he needed to be quicker. So he told him to go out for wrestling. And he went out for wrestling. He finished out his scholarship, with football. But the one guy that, and I got to give him props on this, one guy, he was like 6'8", 6'9", like over 300 pounds, lost the weight and got quicker, but became like a two-time All-American at Campbell, with no high school background, no middle school, nothing. The only background he had was college. And so, and he was able to do that. And once he graduated, he decided he was going to become a wrestling coach. But that's where a lot of that came from. And
Yeah,
then now, even to this day, I officiate high school and college wrestling. And this is my 10th year coming up, my 10th season coming up this year, where I've officiated in 8 state championships and a couple of national championships. So I've officiated in those, and I'm possibly about to go into NCAA's this year for college wrestling.
yeah. I was talking to Shelton the other day at the
Ah,
Fan
yes.
Fest for about 20
Ah,
minutes. I was talking to him about South Carolina wrestling. You know, not pro wrestling, but amateur wrestling.
mhm,
And I started out by telling him, I said, "Man, I said, you know who you really reminded me of was Tim Dudley, TJ,
mhm,
because TJ went from Dutch Fork to Nebraska and was barely outpointed at Madison Square Garden in the finals, in the
mhm,
D1 finals. And then if he wrestled Dave Taylor in the Midlands,
mhm.
which
Yep.
in Poznan Midlands is a huge tournament, and he came very close to beating Taylor. That would have been a huge upset. But he had the look of Shelton. He was right around the same weight class. And then as I was talking to Shelton about South Carolina wrestling, obviously working in the shoot pro, I
Mhm.
mentioned I mentioned Neal and Jeff Lewis Neal, and he goes, oh yeah, he goes, he's a stud, man. He goes, he is a stud wrestler. And I told him how, you know, we were going to bring you into shoot pro, and I said, I don't know,
Nope.
I'm pretty sure he's going to do it. I said, I'm pretty sure Jeff's going to do it. And Shelton said, he goes, man. I'm going to tell him he has to do it, man. He goes, even if I have to go there, he has to do it. So what we're going to try to plan on doing, because we've got quite a while to promote and plan that, is bring Shelton in to do commentary with us, with Larry and myself
Wow.
and Jake for that match. So yeah, we'd love to
Uh-huh.
bring Shelton in on commentary and commentate his buddy Neal. But Neal this guy is a legend in South Kakalaki.
I
And
appreciate that.
yeah, man. I mean, it's a pleasure to know you over there. And it was funny
Oh yeah.
how, you know, it was funny how you were. I didn't know for a while that you were Valponi's roommate,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
teammate in
Old
college. Yeah, Valponi
Valpone
was my
Oni.
best friend. He was
Yeah.
wild, man. He was my best friend in South Carolina. Yeah,
Uh, I'll
you
tell
know,
you
I
a
wrestled
story
him in
about.
pro wrestling too. Did you ever see I brought Valponi to wrestle me in pro wrestling?
No, no. So I gotta watch that sometime.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you
So.
talk about shoot pro wrestling. I mean, that's what I would do with guys like him, and another guy that I coached, Shane Lee, who was younger than him, is bring him in to wrestle, and that's what I did with Bonner and Baroni, because I'm
Mhm.
telling you, it makes for the best matches. It always steals the show when you go out there and wrestle a guy that can wrestle, and and shoot pro, like I say, shoot pro wrestling it's not shoot style, it's shoot pro. It's all shoots,
Right.
takes it to a whole nother level, man.
I'll tell you a story. Shelton and I, we got real close when we had our international tours together in Nigeria. And the first tour we went on, it was okay. They took us everywhere, by bus. And it's like, where the hell are we gonna go, right? But um, we were there, and during the show, like the lights would go out. Like I was wrestling against Mike Mondo over there, and which Mondo's great. Like if you guys get a chance to talk to Mondo, like the Long Island New Yorker comes out and comments. He's awesome. But and there's stories with him. He's hilarious. But we were over there, and me and Mondo were working with, and Chavo Classic was our referee. This is the first story, and all of a sudden, like Mondo comes off the ropes. I hold my foot up. Bam, Chavo, 1, 2, 3. Lights go out. All the lights go out. And then we're like, what's going on here? So then Mondo gets me in a front headlock, and then uh, the people around that had their cameras, like they pulled the lights up. They pulled the spotlights up so where we could see. And then we were hearing stuff hit the floor. Like we were just hearing it, like bottles and sticks and stuff. So then when that happened, I fought up, and then I rolled him up, 1, 2, 3, lights come on. Well, what we didn't know, and then it happened again after Tatanka and Barbarians match. Happened again after that. And then Shelton faced the Warlord, and then one of the Nigeria's guys who went by the Ultimate Commander. Uh, Different story about him, but
Hmm.
Shelton was just getting he was getting on Shelton's nerves bad. But after we had the match, or after they had the match, they were trying to rush us out of there. And Shelton's just like, I'll leave when I'm ready to leave. I'll leave when I'm ready to leave. And I was sticking with him, and then I was like, I think something's happening here, and I think we might need to go. Well, come to find out, they had some preliminary matches earlier in the night. And when they had those preliminary matches, one of the guys died going to his car, got in
Holy.
his car and died. We didn't know. Nobody tells us anything. We're just in the back, and we're just like, okay, like what's going on here? And they're fighting for the first Nigerian heavyweight championship. But I guess they both wanted it because they were both shooting hard. And they didn't want, the one didn't want to go under, the other one didn't want to go under. They both wanted to go over. But apparently, like, there were some blows that were hitting very, very hard. And I don't know if something happened with the guy's heart or something. But the reason why the lights went out, the guy's buddies found out about it, and they were going to come shoot the place up. And that's when we found out about that. So they had to get us out of there like quickly. Second story, we got back to the hotel safely. Got back to the hotel safely and got our chicken and rice, and we were happy. So, but second story, we go to Abuja on the next tour. We were in Lagos, and then we went to Abuja. Now, in Lagos, as I said earlier, they took us by bus everywhere. Didn't matter what. Then when we went to Abuja, which is a nicer part of Nigeria, they hired people off the street to take us to wherever we needed to go. And they gave these people specific instructions. They were like, you stay in the line, you don't get out, you don't go, you don't venture out, otherwise you forfeit your pay. And that's essentially, how they would instruct everybody. Well, in the car, there was the driver. The passenger seat is Shelton, Kevin Sullivan in the back seat, and then I'm right behind the driver. And so once that took place, we're driving and we're just sitting there just chatting it up in the car, just not a care in the world. All of a sudden, our driver does not take the exit like everybody else. He stays straight. And then we're like, and if you know Kevin, I know Matt knows Kevin.
Oh yeah.
God bless his soul. I miss Kevin too. But Kevin gets very animated when he's starting to get a little antsy, or if he's starting to get a little bit freaked out. Like the arms will start waving, and he starts bouncing back and forth like Jesse Ventura, sitting at a broadcast booth. He'll start to get a little antsy, and he goes, "Brother, what are you doing, brother?" And then next thing you know, Big Shelton sitting in the front seat, and you can see steam coming off of his head. He's so mad. And then I'm sitting there like, all right, what's this guy like really doing? I'm trying to be the calm one in the group, even though Shelton's not saying a word and you can tell he's mad. And Kevin's being, all animated. Well, then the guy's like, he tells us something like, oh, blah, 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 blah. And then we're like, okay, this guy's up to something. Then the guy keeps going. He flashes his lights at the people that are coming this way, flashes his lights. And then Kevin, being animated, don't give him the effing Iggy. He tells him that, and we're like, oh boy, something's happening here. So then he pulls off. The guy does. I roll down my window. Now, when I roll down my window, the guy gets out, but before he can get out, I meet him right out where his head is out, but then Shelton grabs him. And once Shelton grabs him, Shelton goes, you take one more mother effing step and I'm going to effing kill you. And then the guy like just goes,
Shoot.
okay. And I looked at the guy and said, you might want to get in the car. And then the guy got in the car. But the thing was that I don't know if the guy could understand what we were saying, but like Kevin was saying, like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? Well, I looked down, it was a 5-speed. I didn't know if Kevin could drive one. I didn't know if Shelton could drive one, but I know I could. Coming from Greenville, I was raised on 5 speeds, you know.
Right,
So
yeah.
I was like, guys, if we have to, I at least know how to drive one. I was like, I just don't know where we're going. I was like, so we have some comfort in that. So then once that happens, we tell the guy, like Kevin's cussing the guy, Kevin's doing whatever. But the fact that Shelton just turned and looked at him, and Shelton just had that massive hand of his and just going, knock your mother effing head off right now. Did that. And the guy just goes, okay, I take you where you need to go. The guy took us back to the hotel. And
I'll t-
after that, the promoter shows up in a van, sees us three just sitting there. The driver stupidly is waiting for his pay. Waiting for his pay. We finally tell him, like, this guy like ventured off, did whatever, he went into the town. And then when that happened, he was just like, oh, no, 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 misunderstanding, misunderstanding. And it was like, ain't nothing misunderstanding about this. They ended up taking us to the restaurant, which was a karaoke bar in Nigeria, of all places. And then
Wow.
Shelton Benjamin and I tore the house down by singing P. Diddy's Every Step I Take. I'll be watching you.
That's
Wow.
awesome.
Good
You know
one.
what?
Nice.
Tore it
I got
down.
to tell you something that the fans might not know about Shelton Benjamin. So he wrestled for Minnesota, right? For Marty Morgan and Eric Paulson, who I did my book with, and was my coach, great guy. They used to go out. They brought Marty Morgan in for Brock's camp, to train
Hmm.
Brock when he started in UFC.
Yep.
And I learned all this through that. Did you know that Shelton was actually Brock's coach? He was assistant
And
coach at
and
Minnesota,
roommate
and
and
yeah,
roommate
and
at
roommate at
OBW.
Minnesota at
Well, no,
OVW.
at
Yeah, but,
OBW.
but OVW, but he was, but at University of Minnesota, he was the assistant coach for Brock.
Hmm. Yep.
Because he coached after because he's a little bit older than Brock, and I'll tell
Hmm.
you, man, he doesn't look his age, man. That dude
No,
doesn't
not at
age.
all.
He's in great shape, man.
Shelton ages great. And then the thing is like he told me a story when he was living with Brock that all Brock wanted to do was go to the gym and eat, obviously. I mean, look at the size of him, right? And he said he had to stop working out with Brock because Shelton's genetics would have him get the same size as Brock Lesnar. And he even said like he had to stop working out with him because it was starting to hurt like his joints, but he was so genetically gifted, still is
Mhm.
genetically gifted to where like you know he would get big, just like Brock. And the funny story about Shelton is like I always look at him every time when we were in Nigeria, and we would always quote the Dave Chappelle show, I'm Rick James, bitch, darkness, everybody, darkness. So every time, whenever I would call him, I'd be like, darkness, what are you doing, darkness? And then he's like, it's a celebration, bitch. Well, I had texted Charlie because Charlie Haas was, he was coaching a team down in Florida, actually. And he was talking about bringing this team up here to South Carolina for a tournament. It's called the Southern Slam at
Yep.
Eastside High School. And they have 40 teams throughout the Southeast, even up north in, what is it, Delaware and in Maine. They have a couple of teams that come down. So, and I officiate in it every year. And I was trying to get Charlie's team on it and finally
Mhm.
got him in. And then I texted Shelton and I said, hey, Darkness. I was like trying to get a hold of Charlie. He's not answering his phone. Like, give him this message and this, blah, 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 blah. So then Shelton's like, all right, I'll screenshot it and send it to him. So then Shelton screenshotted it and sent it to him. Charlie calls me and he goes, "So I got a couple questions." And then he starts asking me about the tournament and this and that, blah, 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 blah. And then he just goes, "And another thing, how do you get away with calling him Darkness? I've tried that for freaking years and he gets mad at me if I do something like that. How do you get away with it? And I don't." I was just like, well, you
That's
got to
funny.
understand, we were about to be kidnapped together. We were about to be shot up together. I don't think y'all have that bond. So, it
I
was
got
just a
I got
good
to
laughing moment
relate
with
that
that.
relating that to Shoot Pro. I'm familiar with the team that Charlie coaches down here because
Yes.
I was out in Tampa for Sickles High School, and
Mhm.
our Shoot Pro commissioner Gerald Briscoe has a tournament called the Jerry Briscoe Challenge. And
Yeah.
I was out there with Charlie and Jerry for that tournament. And here's some interesting history about wrestling here, high school wrestling in the state of Florida, that pro wrestling fans will find really interesting. The that the reason why, and coming from Connecticut, we would always say, Northeast, Midwest, way ahead of the South in wrestling because we'd had teams longer, right? We'd had programs longer. Not Florida. Florida's programs go all the way back to Jack Briscoe, and Eddie Graham started those programs here in Florida. They were instrumental, and Bob Roop and Jerry Briscoe were the
Yep.
four guys that were instrumental. And Florida is way ahead of the rest of the South in wrestling.
Yep.
In amateur wrestling, and it's because of pro wrestling, which I think people will
Yep.
find that really interesting. And if you ever have, I think you probably had Jerry on your show before, right?
Oh, yep, numerous times. Yep.
Yeah, next time you have Jerry on, he can give you that history much better than I can because he lived it. I mean, he created it. So he is a legend in high school wrestling here. And you go to that tournament and you'll see Jack and Jerry Briscoe's. They have a big banner when you come in, and they have the shirts they're selling. And Jerry and Jack actually started that program. They were the first coaches for that program in Tampa, still one of the most dominant teams here in Florida, Sickles High School.
Awesome.
Nice. And it's interesting, Neil. I was finding this out. You had a WWE tryout match against Charlie Haas. Is that accurate?
It is. I've had many matches, and as a matter of fact, Charlie was. I don't know if you remember his match in Ring of Honor, where he ended up getting into a fight in the back, and he and then he put the guy over before he quit the company. I don't know if you know that story or not, but I was the guy he put over. So we wrestled in WWE and then came back, which Charlie broke two of my ribs in WWE, and that was brutal. I've never had broke ribs before. I've had many other things, but broke ribs, I'm just like, oh, good Lord. But yeah, once we had the match at Ring of Honor, I mean, it was crazy. It was crazy. I didn't know he was going to do something like that. And then next thing, but it put me on the map. I was like,
How
all
did he,
right,
how did he
Charlie.
how did he do it, Neil? How did he break your ribs?
A 50-yard field goal kick right to my ribs.
Oh,
Right before Monday Night Raw. So we were in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I thought he was going to do something, and I'm draped over the ropes, and he just goes boop. Afterwards comes up. Sorry about that, brother. Like, yeah, don't worry. They're just
did
floating
you
around.
did you get a receipt? Did you get your receipt from him, Neil?
No, no, I
No.
I knew he didn't. I didn't knew he didn't mean anything by it. But the funny thing was he was so upset at Ring of Honor where he tells me in the ring, he had the microphone. He goes, "You're still the same piece of s, this and this, da da da." And then while he still has the mic right here, he goes, "Slap the s out of me." With the habit, Charlie, what the bam? So slap him. But we got through the match, and I mean, it was good. It was a good match. I've always had great matches with Charlie.
Awesome.
You've had a lot of interesting, like, just opponents through the years, and I feel like Big Time Wrestling, they gave you like a lot of big names. Like you were like the big name hunter, if you will, for years.
Yeah,
Steiner and
yeah.
all the other guys.
Well, that's with Ricky Nelson also who ran Mid Atlantic Championship Wrestling. I would wrestle Buff Bagwell,
Yep.
Scott Steiner, Rick Steiner, Saul Duggan,
Great Khali. I remember when you
the
wrestled
great
Great Khali.
great Khali in Spartanburg, which that was interesting when I go to the guy who's, you know, taller than my home. And he comes up and I said, I have ideas for us. And then he looks at, what are you talking about? But that was interesting. Vader, we got to work with
Right.
Vader.
Yeah.
Um, Rock and Roll Express. Who else?
Nasty Boys. You wrestled Nasty Boys.
Nasty Boys.
Sandman.
La 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 la. I was the fake Shawn Michaels on Monday Night Raw. Worked with Dwayne The Rock Johnson as I was protecting him from Goldberg. Um, who else? Who else? Billy Gunn. Um, Wildfire, Tommy Rich, baby. Even just trying to come up with them, something comes to mind, and I'm
It's a
like, oh
lot,
yeah,
though. It's
him.
great.
Oh yeah, him. Oh yeah,
Who
him.
was your
You know.
Who was your favorite opponent?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I'd have to say, one of my favorites, my absolute favorite, was with Buff Bagwell, and there's two matches with that. The first one was when he was. It was kind of right after he did the WWE deal, and then we were going into some matches where he could still go. And it's not a diss on Mark because he's one of my dearest friends. I love him to death. It's not a diss on him, but he could still go. He could still do a lot of things at that time. And we had a killer match. A killer match. But then there was one we did for Big Time Wrestling, and we didn't know that Kevin Nash was going to be in his corner. Like we had no idea because I was like, if I had known that, I would have incorporated something in this. We didn't find out until I'm in the ring, and then here comes Mark, and then all of a sudden Nash walks through the curtain with him. And we're like, why didn't you tell me? And he goes, I didn't know either, buddy. So we're out there doing the thing. I faked an injury out there to where I literally had the people believing I was legit hurt. Even Nash, even Kevin Nash, I had him believing I was legit hurt.
Awesome.
And then had the people silent. And when I'm coming up to my feet, and then Mark's got the people on their feet, literally standing ovation, clapping, and he circles around, and I move the referee out of the way, super kicking. And to hear that place come unglued, and to see Nash's face where he was like, "You got me, you son of a bitch. You got me." And so get to the back, he was like, I didn't think I could be worked like that. You got me." So that was a true compliment, to hear
That's
that.
awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. That's great. And you can't forget the Koloff Dynasty. You can't forget about working with
Yeah,
Nikita, Uncle Nikita.
yeah. Nikita, he's been a real great mentor. He's been an incredible mentor, and I can't say enough good things about Nikita. Just somebody that keeps in touch with me every day, every day, and I love him like he's my own uncle. So that's why whenever I talk to him, I say, "What's going on, Unc? How you doing? How's everything going?" So it's one of those things where I'm truly blessed that God brought him into my life, and not only that, but Miss Renee, Ivan's widow, blessing it. It's been a true honor to be able to do that. Really has been.
Yeah, working for NWA too. Obviously Alexander
Yep.
Koloff. I mean, that's pretty cool. And obviously the tie-in with Nikita and Nikita being a part of it, very, very cool. I mean, it's just awesome
Yes.
to keep the Koloffs going, if you will, the dynasty, if you will.
Yes. Yes. It's really been an amazing experience.
So as we hit the wind down here, we head towards the finish. King, give us one last big push for everything Shoot Pro.
Sure. Our episodes will be coming out in the next 3 to 4 weeks. That'll include our fast-paced matches that I called with the living legend Larry Zbyszko and our CEO Jake Shannon from the under 80 kilogram, over 80 kilogram, and tag team tournaments. And they will also include coaching clips from our coaches, the King of Pins, Guinness record holder Wade Chalice, Pat Miletich, UFC Hall of Famer and world champion, and of course, Frank Shamrock. Jake is incorporating those, got a sort of a merger of scientific wrestling and Shoot Pro wrestling for the new season. So we're really excited about that. We have our contract with Triller TV. We're going to be airing them on Hannibal TV. We're going to be airing them on a really popular martial arts platform that goes back there, a magazine that's going to be doing a cover story on Frank and Pat, Action Martial Arts Magazine. They've got a massive platform, and we'd love to air them here on the Two-Man Power Trip as well. And in addition to that, we're going to be airing on TV. We've got our partner in Charleston. We also have another partner down here in South Florida, Davey Iacovetti, and he also does television in Vegas, which is a CW affiliate. So we'll be airing on TV, Trailer TV, and throughout the net. And I just want to say again, for fans, much different than what Bischoff and Hogan are doing. I wish them the best of luck with Real American Freestyle. But to give the fans the difference, I competed in freestyle back in the 90s. Hannibal, who Jake and I were just on his show a few days ago, he was a national champion in freestyle in Canada. And I think he summed it up best when he said, the way the rules of freestyle are now, the way they've changed, it's almost more like sumo, where guys are trying not to lose. There's little to no mat time. It's basically a game of takedowns versus Shoot Pro, which is fast-paced, 3 5-minute rounds, win by pin or submission, best of 3. And, man, when folks start to see these matches, oh, man, they are non-stop action. Check out shootprowrestling.com and subscribe to the Scientific Wrestling Instagram.
And how about you, Neal Koloff? Where could everybody follow you, all your social media?
You can find me on Facebook.com/Neal Koloff, Instagram @Neal Koloff, and on Twitter/X @Jeff Lewis Neal. I've got to run, guys. Thank you so much for having me, and I will see you guys down the road. I appreciate it.
Great to see you, Neal. Thank you. Thanks, Paz.
And thank you, King. I appreciate all the time. Great to have you on. I love your vast knowledge, not only of wrestling, but MMA, the shoots, if you will, the amateur style. You know everybody and everything, so I love it. Even Shelton Benjamin tidbits there, so I love that. Great stuff.
Thank you. Thanks, Paz. We really appreciate you having us on. And once again, just one final plug, shootprowrestling.com is the place to go to find out more.